Welcome to the Sonic Cinema Podcast. My name's Brian Scuttle, and thank you for joining us at www.sonic-cinema.com. 2 years ago, when I started this podcast, one of the first things I did was I asked my good friend Ronnie Haynes to join me in talking about Star Wars, which we both love and adore. It was right before Force Awakens started. So 2 years later, with The Last Jedi right around the corner, I decided to welcome back Ronnie Haynes to the podcast, but we also decided to bring in a friend of ours who is probably the biggest Star Wars fan that I know, and certainly even bigger than both of us. Daniel Green, who I've known for a lot of years because we used to work together. And the three of us actually went to Star Wars Celebration together earlier this year in Orlando. And I thought it would be good to bring him in to discuss the series, talk about what he enjoys about the series. And one of the things Ron and I talked a lot about the franchise before Disney in our last episode. I kind of wanted bring in Daniel also to, as we discuss the what the franchise has been like since Disney took over and now that the movies are starting to come out. So welcome both Ronnie Haynes and Daniel Green to the podcast.
To be here. Thanks for having me. I'm totally excited about this.
So the first, I know one of the things Ron and I did start out with on the last podcast was we talked about our respective histories with Star Wars, and I wanted to sort of give you the opportunity to talk about yours as well.
So Star Wars obviously has become a generational thing for most people nowadays, and it started with me back in, I think it was 95 when Lucasfilms released the THX editions of the box sets. And I have two siblings, so for Christmas we got my dad the Star Wars. And at the time my brother gave him the A New Hope for Christmas. I gave him Empire Strikes Back. And then my sister gave him Return of the Jedi. And I remember Christmas Day opening up, my dad was ecstatic because he always had to borrow a set from a friend of ours at the time. And so that night it started, my brother got a tent for Christmas, and we pitched the tent in the living room, turned on the old tube TV that is terrible nowadays, and popped in Star Wars. And life was changed because we watched New Hope that night, and then we watched Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi early the next morning. So that's kind of my history and how it got in. Obviously my dad is a huge fan as well and kind of brought me into it. So.
Was that your first time seeing the movies, or had you seen them before?
That was my first time to ever watch them in its entirety.
Okay.
My dad had watched them, and I'd be like in the living room, kind of like popping in and out. But at the time, that was like 95, so I would have been about 7 years old. So, kind of parents, and some of the stuff in there is a little dark for some of the kids. So
yeah,
they both agreed to let me watch A New Hope, and then I begged to watch the other two the next morning. So.
Well, and one of the reasons that it's hard to argue with what Ron was saying, as far as by far being the biggest Star Wars fan of the three of us, is because of the fact that you've also gotten into the books. You'd also gotten into the expanded universe over the years. Now the Legends, as far as Disney, but you still read the books. I know one of the things you were really excited about trying to do when we went to Celebration was meet Timothy Zahn, who had written the Thrawn trilogy, and just sort of tell, because Ron and I have never really read the books. I mean, I know for me, I never really have, but I'm pretty sure it's basically the same with Ron.
Closest I've gotten is I read Carrie Fisher's biography that she came out this year. That's the closest I've gotten.
So, what sort of led you to? Was it just being enraptured by Star Wars from the get-go that got you into reading the expanded universe?
So basically the books came along. So I watched the movie, and the movies were all existed, and then toys, and obviously I bought every freaking toy that existed at the time. But the books came along because I wasn't doing well in school. My parents were just trying to get me to read stuff. And honestly, Scholastics that year, or maybe 2 years later, had a Star Wars book in there. And I was like, let's get it. And so I just kind of started reading them and went from there. And it was the old school Galaxy of Fear stuff. I forget who the author was, but it was little kids' books, Scholastic Age. And so I read those. There was about 13 of them over the next several years that came out. And then it kind of, I got to the age where I need to read something else, bigger stuff. And never got into other books. I tried to pick up some other books and never read all the way through or lost interest. It was Timothy Zahn's, the Thrawn trilogy that really got me into it. Just the creativity, another evil, menacing person that didn't have the Force, didn't have abilities or anything like that. He was just a tactician and very thought everything through and everything like that. And it just got absorbed completely into that trilogy. And then after that trilogy, it was like, okay, so what's next in this universe? And because Thrawn, the Timothy Zahn series was the first main one that enraptured a lot of people. Obviously, before that, we had Splinter of the Mind's Eye that came out right after New Hope back in '78.
Which I like that you brought Splinter of the Mind's Eye, because wasn't that meant to be sort of the sequel to New Hope? If New Hope hadn't been a big hit or something? Wasn't that the...
Yeah, so basically, there was a New Hope, and then after that, because George had the idea of making other movies, but it was only pitched as a single movie. It was designed as a single movie.
Right.
Splinter of the Mind's Eye was kind of like, this could be the next movie, and it was written by Alan Foster, and honestly, it's a terrible book. It's awful. I struggle through it still when I read it.
I just remember hearing something interesting like that. Splinter of the Mind's Eye was written on a small scale on purpose, so you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So the idea was it could possibly be a movie. So it was actually originally a script, if I'm not mistaken. That was a script for a potential second movie.
That's what I heard.
And then it didn't go over very well, but it became a book. Thank goodness it was a book and not a movie. Because Empire Strikes Back is arguably the best Star Wars movie out right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where that book was. It was potentially a lead into another movie. The script for it, and then it got canned as far as the script goes, but it became a book.
Right.
And it's okay. It is pretty rough. It does a decent job of tying in some of the characters and going forward from there. But we still go back to the Luke and Leia kiss and Empire Strikes Back, and they become brother and sister down the road. Splinter of the Mind's Eye, there was a scene in there that was pretty dark on that scale as well. So it's a good thing it's just a book, and now it's just legend.
Well, one of the things that, and it occurred to me in the past couple of days that you can talk about this from a perspective that Ron and I cannot talk about this because you have kids, and so obviously being a huge Star Wars fan, it's like one of the important things for you is to be able to share these movies in this universe with your kids. And I know one of my favorite film critics, Drew McQueenie, wrote about this in one of his columns when sharing the movies with his kids when the Blu-rays came out. And the way he approached it very specifically with a specific order in mind, where it's like he showed them A New Hope, then he showed Empire, then he showed them the prequels as sort of a flashback to, well, what is the truth about what Darth Vader says to Luke at the end of Empire? Is that true that he is his father or not? And then you conclude with Jedi. And the way he wrote about it was really fascinating to hear how his kids reacted, the way his kids talked about it, the way they absorbed it, because it was the first time they had seen it. And so I was just kind of curious to ask you how do you look on where are you coming from when you start to share Star Wars with your kids?
So Asher's my oldest at 4 years. And I have a daughter, Adeline, at 2, and then we have Ezra, our third one's along the way here in February. And basically, my love for Star Wars is, I watch it frequently. It's always on in the background. Is even just the soundtrack for music.
Mm-hmm.
And with Asher, I think he saw it. He was probably 2 when I first actually showed it to him, maybe a little bit younger than 2. And my thought process at the time was, here's Star Wars, let's watch it. This is amazing. So we watched A New Hope, and then there's scenes I don't think about, especially as an older person. 30 years old, and when we watch A New Hope, and then you see the Owen and Lars bones in there, you don't think about he's 2. Like he doesn't understand this, and it's a dark moment in the movie that is not understandable, and so we watched that, and my wife walks down, and she's like, "You're letting him watch this?" And I was like, "Oh, I forgot about that scene." And so there's scenes that you forget about in the movie that as a 30-year-old, it's perfectly normal, and it's actually very G-rated nowadays.
Yeah.
But your kid's 2 when he first watches it. Now he's 4. So we watched New Hope, and then it was probably several weeks later we watched Empire Strikes Back, and then again you forget about scenes. So the Wampa scene in there where he knocks out Luke on the Tauntaun and stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing is I wanted to ask you about was you said, I remember you saying at one point, posting something on Facebook about watching Empire with Marissa and your kids, and you had to fast forward through all the fighting parts. What kind of experience is that for you as a father with kids and everything? Like I couldn't help. I mean, I to a degree I understood, but then I don't understand completely because I don't have kids. So I don't know what it's like to have to watch a movie and censor certain parts of it, and everything like that. And,
Mm-hmm.
So that must make for a really short movie for one. So, but,
Yeah. So I mean, it's now with the New Hope, we watch it beginning to end. It doesn't matter. We even all the fight scenes and blaster scenes. And
Mm-hmm.
the only one we actually still skip through is when Darth Vader strikes down Obi-Wan, just because he doesn't understand the whole killing stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously stormtroopers getting hit and falling down.
Yeah.
He doesn't recognize some of that. So A New Hope is probably the easiest one. There's not a lot of dark stuff in there. It's very honestly kid friendly. Like George has always mentioned that these were designed for kids, which is to an extent okay, but as society changes, some of the stuff you have to be careful. So I can tell you, Empire Strikes Back is a very, very short movie because there's a lot of darkness in it, obviously. It's probably why it is one of the best ones. It's a very dark, not just from what you visually see, but from what you know is actually going on through the thought process of the characters inside the movie itself. So
yeah.
This is definitely one of the shortest ones. We've seen Return of the Jedi once or twice in its entirety, and it's a relatively short one as well. I mean, just scenes there you don't think about. I mean, the Sarlacc pit, and unfortunately, the first time he watched the movies was all of them were Blu-ray, and then I went back and showed him. I actually have the DVD original, unaltered stuff, and on a 55-inch HD TV, it's pretty crummy quality. So, but I showed it to him, so he's seen it. So like the Sarlacc pit in the special edition stuff is. It's very scary for a young, 2, 3, 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But then when you watch it in the HD and it's just tentacles and some, and just some claws, if you will, hanging out on the side of the pit, it's not that bad. So, but yeah, it's the movies are a lot shorter when you have a younger kid like that because you want to censor what he's watching, what he sees, and that sort of thing. So.
How old do you think you'll let them start?
That was actually gonna be my question.
Oh, no.
But that's fine.
Yeah, so I've talked to Marissa a lot about it because The Force Awakens is awesome, and he's seen A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi in that order, and then we went back and sad to say he watched Phantom Menace with me. Sad to say he watched Attack of the Clones with me. We had to fast forward through a few scenes in there. He has not seen Revenge of the Sith at all. We kind of drew the line on that. It's a PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
There is a lot of darkness throughout the entirety of that movie. It's the visual effects of it are really, a lot of killing and death and obviously Anakin at the end being caught on fire. So there's a lot of stuff like that. It's just a very dark. I mean, Empire is dark, but then you kind of think about, well, how dark is Empire compared to Revenge of the Sith? So he has not even seen that one at all. And he loves Kylo Ren. I mean, so when The Force Awakens came out, he wasn't even 2 when The Force Awakens came out, and every trailer, and I was just devouring every information that came out at the time. And I mean, the trailer came out on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I think I remember watching your I remember watching your reaction video to The first trailer.
Yeah.
You were going nuts.
Yeah. I recorded. I went home from. I worked at Black Friday. So that was what 2014.
Yeah, it was
trailer
14.
Came out, and
Yeah.
that was Black Friday day. It came on about 9:00 in the morning, and I saw it and watched it 10 times within like 5 minutes at least. Right?
Yeah.
Not really because it's a long trailer, but I went home from work about 7:00 and turned that on and just freaked out with him. I'm like, Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. And like we scream, and I flew him around with like the Millennium Falcon and TIE Fighter going through that the fallen Star Destroyer, and so we had a lot of fun and everything from The Force Awakens. And he fell in love with Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren just had that quick scene where he's walking through the snow and he turns on his lightsaber and his crossguard, and you freak out because you're like, crossguard, what's this about?
Yeah.
And he just has he just admires Kylo Ren and the lightsaber, and now he's in Darth Maul and watches his lightsaber. So he's seen a few parts of The Force Awakens. He still hasn't seen its entirety. You still fast forward, the beginning scene where they fight. We paused. Well, we had to fast forward through that, and but it's the age-wise. We talk about it in age. At this moment in time, at least 10, if not older, before he gets to watch it in its entirety. But it also kind of just depends on his maturity level as he grows up. I mean, if he's not mature enough to watch it, then we won't let him watch it. I can tell you that Rogue One is one of the movies. It's a fantastic. It has done so much for this company and for the Star Wars series and the storyline of where it's going to go. I want him to watch it. It's fantastic. But I can tell you, it's a war movie. I mean, imagine Saving Private Ryan. How old were you guys when you guys watched that? And you guys.
Well,
probably
we
much
were
older,
we
obviously.
were in our 20s when that came out. I mean that was I mean we were in our 20s, but I mean I know I watched Star Raid movies when I was 10. I mean my parents had, my mother especially had reservations about it. My father was he wasn't big into movies or anything like that. So I mean I had different I can't remember, I don't think there was ever a time where Star Wars wasn't a part of my life. And I mean, so my mother was certainly more, she didn't mind. I mean, I think I was probably too young to watch some of the movies that I watched at the time, but that's looking at it now, being hindsight being 2020. It's like, at the time I was like, I want to see this. It's like, I'll be fine. It's like you would hear. For me, it was hearing other people talk about certain movies. It's like, oh, I want to see that now. And it's like, I want to see that. I want to see that. I want to see that. And the thing is, I wasn't a big hardcore into movies until the 90s. By which point I was a teenager and all that stuff. That's when I did. That's when I really got into movies. But I mean, I mean, one of my first movie experiences, the ones that is most memorable to me, was watching Return of the Jedi in theater, and I was 5 at the time. I was going on 6. And the reason I remember that is, the reason it's so vivid for me actually has very little to do with the movie itself, and more with the fact that the projectionists just couldn't get it right. Like, there were so many projection issues, like they had to restart the movie like 3 or 4 times, I think, before they finally got it right. And it was opening day, and that was why that imprinted on me. But I mean, I know I watched Star Wars young. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like everybody's gonna approach it differently, And I mean, you're having these discussions with, Marissa, with your wife, and about like how, when is a good point to share certain things with my kids. I mean, that's perfectly reasonable.
And then we have friends like Jen who like just let her kids watch the most R-rated movies.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was me. Like I watched like the first 6 Friday 13th movies when I was like 10. It's like but I mean, it was something where it's like at a certain point, my mother also put the kibosh on that, because it's like she wasn't necessarily comfortable with me watching those movies, which I get it. But yeah, I mean, it's a discussion that it's it there's really no right answer to that. I think, I mean, everybody's different. Every situation's different. Every parent's different. Every kid's different. It's like and I mean, I completely get where you're coming from as far as like, well, he hasn't seen Revenge of the Sith right now. And it's not even the PG-13 rating. I mean, it is the fact that, yeah, there's a lot of dark stuff in Empire, but there is arguably more darkness in Revenge of the Sith because of what that story is. And I mean, the way that story presents itself, I mean, that's a dark movie. I mean, it really has nothing to do with the PG-13 rating. If you think about like the action and stuff like that, there's probably very little that separates that in a PG rating from the other Star Wars. It's just the tone. I mean, that's one of the different things. So, I mean, I get why you haven't shown Revenge of the Sith to Asher and your other kids yet.
Plus, the rating system is much different than it was back in the day.
Oh, it's weird. Like the Drew McQueen, the critic that I mentioned earlier, who talked about sharing Star Wars with his kids. He's doing this podcast that I'm listening to, A's All Over, and they're up to 1982, and it's fascinating for them talking about, because the PG-13 rating didn't exist at the time. It's fascinating hearing them talk about the movies that were PG. Yeah. It's like, how in the world is that possible? Like, there's no way.
Well,
but
back then there wasn't anything separating PG from R. It was either G, PG, or R, right?
Yeah, basically. And it was, PG was literally parental guidance. It's like your parents will talk to you about it if they feel like they need to. Mm-hmm. It's not like, this is, there's a, like 9 to 5 is a PG movie, was a PG movie at the time. There's no way that would be PG now.
No.
Right.
Like, it's so hard to believe, but yeah, it's fascinating. Have you shown him any of like the Clone Wars or Rebels or anything like that?
Yeah. Actually, I went back and watched the Clone Wars again. It had been years since I had seen it, and so I put it on, and I showed him some of it, and then and there's a lot of action. And I think the first season was good, and then as it progressed, and especially when we got to the Witches of Dathomir.
Yeah.
And you start talking some of the magic stuff there. That's kind of when I was like, yeah, we're done with that. And then, when Star Wars Rebels was announced, I got all excited about that. You're upset that Clone Wars ended the way it did, and then so here it is again with another new cartoon, and it's on the Disney Channel. And so we watched the first season; it was really good, and it kind of the same thing started to progress, where how much of this is okay with him and the action and stuff, and
right,
right. So he only saw the first season so far of Rebels, and Rebels got really dark as well as you've seen.
Yeah.
I think it was the end of season 1, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually saw the last 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he's seen some of those. I did not show him the original Clone Wars, the
the movie. Yeah.
Well, no, not the movie. The Cartoon Network. What was the?
Oh, the Jendy Tartakovsky.
Yeah.
The cell animation.
Yeah. So he has not seen that at all, but
those are really good.
Yeah, they're good. But yeah, so it's just he's one of those. He loves just Star Wars, just seeing Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, they went shopping yesterday.
You are raising him.
At Bargain Hunt, and he saw a Star Wars hoodie. It's black. It says Star Wars, and he freaked. He wanted it. He begged my wife for it. And it was $2.50, and so he comes home and teaching him a lesson. He's only 4, but you can have it if you can pay for it. So he goes and he gets money and he starts handing it to me. But, it's just at 4 years old, he's already to buy Star Wars merchandise. He
is going to have, when he's old enough to really let all of Star Wars sink in. Oh, he's going to have He's going to just be soaking it all in. I can imagine.
Like that's young. That's what I say.
Yeah.
It's generational for sure. My dad got me into it. I'm doing my best to get my kids into it. I mean, like they go into the stores and they see Star Wars and they say, "Daddy, Daddy." You know, they know that Daddy would love whatever it was Star Wars. It doesn't matter what it was, he'd love it. And you know, I gave him that's probably about a year and a half ago now. All my Star Wars toys that I had when I was growing up. I gave those all to him, and now they're in parts and pieces everywhere. But he plays with them all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and loves them, and my daughter plays with them as well. So it's, you know, definitely started at a young age. And I got another one, Ezra, on the way. His name is Ezra from the Bible, although I will joke with my wife, and I've always joked that it's Ezra from Star Wars Rebels.
Yeah.
But it's from the Bible. So, but yeah, so another one to bring into the Star Wars world as well.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the big things I wanted to talk about with us is, I mean, Ron, I touched a lot on the pre-Disney material, because, I mean, really, that was basically all there was in 2015. Force Awakens hadn't come out yet. It was only a season and a half into Rebels. Needless to say, I mean, obviously, this is big boom time for Star Wars, because since Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012 and basically brought the franchise back into the forefront of one of the big franchises in movie history. I know my personal feelings on it, and I mean, we can definitely touch on that. I'm just kind of curious where both of you guys are with how Disney has treated the franchise so far. Daniel, I mean, you can obviously talk a lot more about it than we can as far as the books and stuff like that have come out. And but I mean, obviously the movies are a big part of that. We've got Force Awakens that came out. We've got Rogue One that came out, and then, you know, next week we have The Last Jedi. It seems like every week it seems like there's new news when it comes to Star Wars. Just sort of wanting to sort of do a little bit of a round table as far as like see where you guys are at with it. I mean, I know we had this discussion a lot when we were at Star Wars Celebration. We had a lot of time in both the car driving back, as well as the god-awful lines at Celebration, to discuss things. And so, I mean, I just kind of wanted to...
that's where the infamous who was better, Jin or Rey.
That was a big topic of... we spent a good few hundred miles
discussing...
debating back and forth which was the better protagonist,
Ryan and I are in
Rey or
Ryan
Jin.
and I are in Camp Rey, and Daniel is in Camp Jin.
I'm in Camp Jin. I even named the cat after Jin. It's Jin.
Yeah.
And well, where did that come from? I was like, it's not like we think Jin is a terrible character. We just thought that well, there was that video essay that I
which you shared, that was basically the idea that Rey's a very active protagonist when it comes to the story of Force Awakens, whereas Jin is more passive.
Right.
Like, the story, you know, it goes back to the whole nerd fan theorizing, really obsessing over the notion that it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Indiana Jones has no bearing on the story of Raiders of the Lost Ark at all. Like, that whole idea of, well, I mean, if Indiana Jones wasn't part of it, everything still would have happened the same way. It's like, that's not exactly true, but, you know, enjoy your little, 15 minutes of fame when they brought that theory up on the Big Bang theory. But, yeah, I mean, it is interesting to, I mean, obviously those are the main characters in the new movies. Rey obviously became the big star of among the new characters with Force Awakens, and certainly it seems like that's going to be the case with Last Jedi. And then Jin obviously is the protagonist of Rogue One. And so I know I've thought I thought both films were quite good. I really have enjoyed Rebels. I haven't watched this season, unfortunately. I need
Force
to.
Awakens was a hair better than Rogue One.
I sort of, and the thing is, I've
I
watched
like,
them
I like
now.
Rogue One. I like what's being done with the spin-off movies. I think we're in good hands as fans. I think we're in good hands with how the spin-off movies are being handled
Yeah.
and everything.
Yeah.
But just ultimately, Jin the character of Jin wasn't executed as successfully as I thought. Right. But that's just me.
Well, and I think part of it is also there is a difference in like Jin. It's basically just going to be that movie.
Yeah.
Because we know the end game of that movie because we've seen where that movie goes from there with A New Hope.
Yeah.
With Rey, you're basically building a character to sustain 3 movies.
Right.
And I think that's one of the important differences.
Yeah, so for me the whole thing with Jin was it was 2 things. It was obviously with both characters we don't know anything about their history. Like they both walked in, and we still have questions about them if you look from just a movie standpoint. And I'm big into books. I call it a Star Wars library, and I literally have a library of Star Wars books.
I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah.
You walk into Barnes and Nobles, and I put them to shame. They don't have a Star Wars library like I do. But it was one of those. From the movie perspective, they're both a very similar character. Rey is definitely an activist. She's a go-getter, go get it done kind of thing. Although she was kind of shy about getting it, she didn't want to leave Jakku. She wanted to go back to Jakku. Where Jin, she's just passive. She didn't want to be a part of the war. She didn't want to be a part of the rebellion. And you still don't understand why very well in the books, in the movie. But the books definitely explain it a little bit better. There's a book, Rebel Rising, written by Beth Revis that was very good. Actually, is the what happened. After her parents, her mom died, and then her dad was taken away by Krennic, and
so it fills in all the blanks.
Yeah, it fills in. So the first 10 minutes of Rogue One, you have the pre-scene of the pre-story of her dad and her mom and her hiding on this world acting as farmers, and then Krennic comes in and then obviously her mom was killed, and Krennic takes her dad away, and then she's stuck in the cave. And Saw Gerrera picks her up, and then we flash forward, 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what happened during 10 years? And it was filled in very good in the book about, Saw raising her, to survive on her own if need be. And she was very active about following him and doing what he needed and learning to survive. But at the same time, she took orders. That was the whole thing. That's her personality, was she kind of took the orders. And so it was one of those that I just enjoyed her character in the movie standpoint of, she's just passive, like a lot of people are. She just kind of goes with the flow, doesn't want to be a part of this war, just wants to do her own thing. And I thought her character was different from the whole, I'm the hero, I'm going to live, and you'll see me in the next movie. Where, I had a feeling, and I think we all did when we went into Rogue One, that they were all going to die. Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
They didn't exist in A New Hope or any of the other ones. So how in the world are we going to have these people live, any of them live for that matter?
Right.
Didn't we say, though, at one point, Brian and you and I were discussing that not all of them had to die?
Yeah, I mean, I think,
at one point?
I'm sure we probably did, where it's like,
Did they have to kill everyone?
But the fact of the matter is, it does,
it
it makes more sense when you think of, because, I mean, basically all that, the purpose of that movie is to fill in a gap between episode 3 and episode 4. Rebels is doing that as well, and you're getting a larger sense of what was going on in the galaxy before New Hope. And so, yeah, I mean, it does make sense that obviously it's like none of those characters are going to live. It's like, obviously, none of them are a part of A New Hope, and it's like you basically come in after their job is done. So Leia already has the plan, so it's like we know what happens from there, what happened before, and it was a great idea by John Knoll to come up with, hey, what if we do this? And it's like that, nobody necessarily thought that would be, something, oh, well, what if we do this? I mean, that's an interesting idea. Plus, it allows you to do, like you said, Daniel, it's a war movie.
Right.
So you're basically doing a Star Wars equivalent of a war movie.
What type of movie are we going to get with Han Solo?
I think I would be kind of surprised if it's not more of a heist movie, if it's more of like an Ocean's 11 type movie or something like that, where, there's going to be action, obviously, because it's Star Wars, but there's also going to be humor because of the fact that it's Han Solo.
Lando Calrissian.
Yeah.
There's much humor now with, that's the thing, like,
with Ron Howard directing, but Ron Howard's still a pretty astute comedic filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, but it's not going to be
this
like
a good segue to like get into like how like all the directors are being.
Oh, we can definitely talk about that. I mean, yeah, and because I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like there's so much to talk about with regards to Disney and their running of Lucasfilm right now, and Kathleen Kennedy is. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy really was the only choice to run Lucasfilm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really was. I mean, she was Spielberg's producer forever. And I mean, she worked with both of them. I mean, Frank Marshall, who I think they were husband and wife, if they're not still husband and wife. I mean, I know they produced together. Frank Marshall helped produce Raiders.
Yeah.
So I mean, he had a history with them. But yeah, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy, the past year when it has looked like things are not necessarily going to turn out that well with these. I mean, she hasn't been afraid to cut loose of filmmakers, sometimes deep into production with Solo. I mean,
that's what was what was so jarring about what happened with that movie. So like, wake up one morning and like read that in your news feed.
Yeah.
That, all of a sudden like Solo has a completely different, or like they're cutting the direction. Who are the guys?
Chris Miller and Phil Lord.
Yeah.
They'd done the Lego movie. They'd done the Jump Street movies, and they also did Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, the first one. But yeah, I mean, but the thing is, it's not. It's obviously the most high profile because of the fact that they were so deep into production, but. Even Rogue One, I mean, I don't think Gareth Edwards directed the reshoots. I think Tony Gilroy did that.
Yeah. It went back there. I mean, it was back. I mean, here's the thing. So there's director changes. I know Colin Trevorrow just got cut recently as well. But
yeah,
if you look at it, so we have Force Awakens, and it was a fantastic movie. Yes, there's a lot of similarities with A New Hope. Obviously, there's a ton of differences that people don't realize. Again, go read the books. There's a lot more in the books that aren't in the movie. Such as the killer base is not absorbing a sun; it's actually absorbing dark matter. And if you get deep into that, that's actually Sith-related stuff. So actually, in the book itself, they don't absorb a sun and then turn that energy into the plasma, which is also interstellar. It's not in the same star system when it's shot and destroys a planet. And not only does it destroy one, it destroyed multiple planets.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of differences that people want to.
If they had tried to explain that a little bit better in the movie, I think a lot of criticism of that part in particular probably will have helped, because that's actually much more interesting than it's absorbing the sun.
Yeah. Well,
it's like.
You also have to put a visual in place, because now we're watching a movie, and this is the difference between books and movies. Is so in a movie you just have to watch and visually see and listen to the dialogue that's going on, the music that's going on. Where in the book you actually get to read words, and then your mind starts to expand more. And then through words you can be a lot more descriptive when you're reading a book and words. I mean, obviously you have the quotes of people saying stuff, but then you can go into how they're feeling as they're saying something or what's going on.
Yeah.
It goes back to Revenge of the Sith. In Revenge of the Sith book, and this is not in the movie at all, Anakin throughout the entire book is actually fighting himself. There's an inner dragon there's actually two dragons that are going on that are fighting with him, and he's trying to take control of them, and he finally does control one of the dragons, and it ended up being the other way around, where actually the dragon took control of him, and it's the dark dragon versus the light dragon. So you get into the stuff where there's books that help out a lot, and so you go with going back to where we were originally with directors getting cut. Force Awakens is fantastic, though it's similar to New Hope. Then we have Rogue One, where it's a completely different. It's a war movie. It's bloody. It's gruesome. It's death. There are heroes, but the heroes don't live. The heroes all die.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alan Tudyk, we love you. Why'd you have to die? But there was a lot of issues at the end of Rogue One. Right before it came out, they were doing reshoots, in June before it was released in December.
Yeah.
Everybody started freaking out, like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And we can go, now we go to Han Solo, solo movie, and they're in the middle of shooting production, and they axe the directors and bring on Ron Howard. But Kathleen Kennedy, she knows what she's doing. I mean,
oh yeah,
we're good. We're in good hands right now. I think we're gonna be in good hands until we have a bad movie, and then when we're in a bad movie, then we might start to worry. But at this moment in time, and Colin Trevorrow just got cut, and that's kind of unfortunate because I think we all agree that Lost World, or not Lost World, but
Jurassic
World was an amazing movie, and then he had the other movie that came out,
Book of Henry.
Yeah,
Book of Henry.
That did not do very well, and obviously people are thinking, well, maybe it was because of that he got cut, and I don't think it was because
a lot
of
of it
that.
had to do with like what was heard about the way he acted behind the scenes.
And I mean, that was definitely part of it. I mean, with Solo, it was basically just the tone of the movie wasn't jiving with the tone of what Lucasfilm wanted.
Right.
And I mean, it really shows the respect that they have to Lawrence Kasdan, who co-wrote Force Awakens and was writing and was one of the writers of Solo, that basically, like, this is the vision that we should be going. And it was Kasdan's vision. And it's like, Ron Howard's going to bring that on much more, he's going to be much more cognizant of that and be able to bring that more into play than what Miller and Lord did. I mean, Miller and Lord were basically making a comedy.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, at some point, I would like to see what really full-on comedic Star Wars movie is going to be like. I don't necessarily... Well, it just depends on who's doing it.
Yeah.
It depends on who's doing it. I mean, obviously there's going to be serious parts.
That's the thing, like, there should be comedic elements throughout all the movies, I think. Like, just keep things, because that's the thing, like, that's what I love about Force Awakens, is it did have these very intricately placed comedic moments throughout it that kind of made it all that much more enjoyable.
And most importantly, it's coming from the characters.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
that's the important part. I mean, that was...
So who talks first? I talk first? You talk first?
Yeah. I mean, that was... But I mean, and that's part of the... And that was part of the I feel like that was a big part of the miscalibration with... I mean, there were a lot of miscalibrations when it came to Jar Jar, when it came to incorporating humor in the prequels, but one of them was... That wasn't genuine to a character. That was him forcing humor into a situation that didn't necessarily need it. And didn't necessarily warrant it. And it's like forcing comedic relief where it's like the reason R2-D2 and C-3PO works so well in the original trilogy is because of the fact that it's like it comes out very naturally based on what those characters are, who those characters are, even though they're both robots, and one is just speaking in bleeps. Based on what C-3PO is saying, you know exactly how that interaction is going.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the big miscalculation, and with Jar Jar, among other things. But that was one of the big miscalculations with the prequels, was he was forcing humor as opposed to letting the characters be funny in their own right, and that's one of the things that you're right, and it's like you see it in Force Awakens. You even see it in Rogue One, with K2SO. I mean, that character is genuinely funny, and it's all because of what that character is, and Alan Tudyk's performance. And so it's like the idea of, and you're right. I mean, the idea of a truly comedic Star Wars movie is kind of terrifying.
Yeah.
Like the idea of, we're gonna do something wacky in space. It's like, so long as it's coming from the characters, I think that can work.
Exactly.
And I don't think,
These are
probably
action adventure movies with, any comedic elements coming, like you're saying.
exactly. It's from characters. It's not story.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling that was probably what was going on with Solo, and Ron Howard is a much better Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
They were presumably encouraging a lot of improvisation.
Which
Improv.
no.
Yeah.
No.
They're encouraging a lot of
You can't do improv it is in any science fiction movie, really. I mean, you can't do, like, how do you improvise?
That's not true.
In, like, avid.
That's not true.
Well, presumably,
If your name's Harrison Ford,
Exactly.
you can do whatever you want because you are really.
But
good
the
at
thing
improv.
is, it's like there's a big difference between, coming up with "I love you, I know" on the fly, as opposed to Judd Apatow level improv.
Yeah.
Like, there's a big difference between those two things. And I mean that I have a feel. I forgot about the fact that a lot of it was improv, but they were encouraging improvisation. And it's like, yeah, that's not exactly how you do this type of thing.
Right.
But again, I mean, that comes with the filmmaker, and it's like, I have no doubt that Ron Howard is going to make as funny a movie as he feels like that movie can be, because he's one of the most versatile filmmakers of all time, I think.
Well, how much did they say has been reshot with Solo now? I think a good chunk of it was reshot.
I would imagine a good percentage of it was,
because they were only they were in production, but they were still kind of earlier production.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was that much to go back and do a lot of reshoots on.
I mean, I'm sure you had some action beats and stuff like that probably didn't need to be gone back in and stuff like that. And I'm sure you've got some moments. I don't think it's gonna be as jarring as, say, Superman 2, when like Richard Lester took over for Richard Donner. I don't think it's gonna be, and you could obviously see the difference in tones.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna be the case. And the fact of the matter is, it's like Ron Howard's a talented enough filmmaker to where it's like, you're not going to see the seams in that movie. I think going to Trevorrow, it's like, yeah, I do think, what Ron says as far as, like, his
the way he is behind the scenes.
The way he is behind the scenes. And I don't think it necessarily had a lot to do with Book of Henry just not being a good movie, because it wasn't. But I saw the movie, and I don't necessarily think it had as much to do with him as it did with the material he had. Plus I know part of the reason that they let him go and gave it over back to J.J. Abrams was the fact that it's like, there wasn't really he wasn't necessarily taking the story in the direction they wanted to go. I mean, especially with the third part of a trilogy, I think that's important. I mean, you want a personal stamp onto it, but ultimately it's part of a series, and it's part of a larger story, and it's like you want it to be, you want to take it in a very specific way, and if you have that planned out, it's like you want to see that follow through. So
yeah. Well, I'm curious what your thoughts are. So we just talked about directors getting cut, right? So reshoots and then getting cut.
Yeah.
But then let's talk about, so The Last Jedi is not even out yet. We're a week away from The Last Jedi being released.
Yeah.
And so we had J.J. Abrams, and then we have Rian Johnson, and then we had Colin Trevorrow who got cut. And then everybody's like, okay, so who's going to fill in for Colin Trevorrow? And, everybody's like, Rian Johnson, right? I think we all agree that we're all for Rian Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
I think unrealistically, we also want Spielberg to potentially be one, but that was not going to happen either. But then, out of nowhere, J.J. Abrams gets it, So, but Rian Johnson didn't get it. Why? Because behind the scenes there's something going on that we didn't know.
He's developing a trilogy of his own.
Yeah.
And it's like, the fact of the matter is, I think there's a lot of people there's a lot of people concerned about J.J. Abrams finishing the trilogy because they have issues with Force Awakens as a film. But the fact of the matter is, it's like Episode 9 is going to be in a different position than Force Awakens was. Right. Force Awakens, I get why they harken back to, A New Hope a lot, because honestly, that's kind of how like the first movies of all of these trilogies have been. Right. They've always sort of circled back on one another. But the thing is, it's like just because of the fact that it's like the movie Abrams made in Force Awakens harkens back a lot to New Hope doesn't necessarily mean, oh, this is going to be Return of the Jedi. It's like, no, not necessarily. It's going to be its own thing, and a lot of that is going to be where the story of Last Jedi takes us. And yeah, I mean, deep down, it's like, yeah, it would have been really exciting to have Rian Johnson finish up the trilogy. I mean, I thought he was originally, when they signed him for Episode 8, he was also going to be a writer on Episode 9 as well. He was going to help out with the story, and that may still very well be true. He probably will still have a story credit. You might still have a story credit on there. But yeah, like you said, one of the things we learned recently is the fact that he is overseeing a new trilogy. I mean, at this point, this is where I'm finally really, really getting hyped up about the potential of this deal with Disney, because of the fact that I get why they've had to start, why they felt the need to start these new run movies the way they did. Like, you do the sequel trilogy, obviously, because 7, 8, and 9, you finish that arc with Luke, Leia, and Han. And then you have Rogue One, which harkens back to to A New Hope. You have Han Solo,
Young Han Solo.
You have young Han Solo. And then, there have been other ideas made about, like, oh, well, maybe they'll do an Obi-Wan movie with Ewan McGregor. Maybe they'll do Boba Fett. And it's like, all of that still could be in the cards. I'm looking forward to new stuff. I want characters I've never seen before. I mean, that's been the big frustration. If I've had frustration with the beginning of this, it's the fact that it's like we haven't seen really original stuff. And so the idea of, it frustrates me, the idea of people being disappointed that Rian Johnson is not necessarily going to do a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy. It's like, I don't have the same relationship with that material that you do. Right. I don't want pre-existing material being adapted. I just want original stuff with original characters I've never heard of, original universes, and all of that.
Knights of the Old Republic trilogy does sound pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, so obviously there's the main universe of the Luke Skywalker saga as we know it, but there's other things going on throughout forever.
It's one big juggling act. I mean, I want to see the stuff that's gonna probably be considered more fan service than anything else. But I'm also with you, Brian. I want to see more original material. But I have faith. I have faith in the people that are in charge of these movies. I have faith in them we will eventually see a good balance of both.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
I like. I mean, being a book reader, and I actually was not much into the comics at all, but I've read all the books, and there are certain aspects of like you want to go like way back before. Like obviously we had the Republic, the Old Republic, or excuse me, you had the Republic as we saw it in the prequels, and then obviously we saw the downfall. The Republic turned to the Empire. But like I'd like to go back. A lot of us like to go back further and see stuff, and it would be a lot of new material for people though, because most people only know Star Wars from the movie and the TV show standpoint. Mm-hmm. Some people only know it from a movie standpoint.
Yeah.
Some of it only know it from the original trilogy standpoint. Some of it know it from like the prequels and the original trilogies, and some of them know it from the cartoons. But we're still talking they know it from the cinematic side of it.
Yeah.
They don't go to the story side of it, if you will. So there's a lot of material, and honestly, I think that where Rian Johnson could go with this is characters that if you are in the expanded universe, now known as Legends, or even maybe some of these other characters that were briefly touched on, that they might show up in this new trilogy of his. But I think it's definitely an idea of having new material, but you can have new material in an old setting, like going back to the Old Republic.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to have
Yeah.
Raven specifically or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, getting some of those guys, and actually one of the things I've enjoyed is seeing them bring in some of the old material that are now legends into this. So, if we go to Rogue One briefly, they brought in Jyn and that whole team that ends up dying at the end on Scarif. But if you go back to the Legends book, there's the Han Solo trilogy, and it was actually Rebel Dawn where this exact same thing took place. This exact same story took place, not in Scarif per se, but there was a rebel insurgent team that goes into this planet. They steal these plans, the Death Star plans, and they beam it out to another ship. And that was actually the end of the book. That they lost communication with that team that was down there, so it was presumed that they were all killed. And that was actually in the legend. That was Han Solo's girlfriend at the time. And Han Solo had chosen not to go. I forget exactly why, but he actually was not a part of the rebellion where she kept going with the rebellion.
Right.
So it's one of those, like, they nicely tie in stuff like that. So, we have Rebel Dawn, the third book in the Han Solo trilogy, that is very much like Rogue One, though they're different characters, they're different places. Even the action is still different. The results were still the same. The entire team in Rebel Dawn died, just like the entire team in Rogue One died. So, being able to see where they'll bring in stuff like that. Ben Solo, Kylo Ren, and still assuming that Kylo Ren is actually Han Solo and Princess Leia's son, because there's even theories that maybe they're adopted parents. I've been reading a lot about that. It's intriguing. I hope it's not true, but Ben was actually in the expanded universe was actually Luke Skywalker's son with Mara Jade, his wife, who was the Emperor's hand. So having Ben, the name, come back in, and we question, was he named after Ben Kenobi, or from a fan side of it, he could have been named after Ben, Luke's son, who happened to be named after Ben Kenobi. So some of this old material, the legend stuff being thrown into newer movies, and it's little pieces here and there, but it's very intriguing to see where Rian Johnson's going to go with the new trilogy. I like the idea, as well as hopefully it's just a trilogy and that's it, not a trilogy that turns into a trilogy, which turns into another. So now we have a triple trilogy,
another three-part trilogy where it's like, no. And the fact of the matter is, it's like I have no problem with the idea of bringing ideas in from all of this previous material into new projects. I mean, look at Rebels. Like, you brought in Ahsoka Tano at the end of season 1. You brought in Darth Vader. You brought in Thrawn in season 3, and that was a fantastic addition. Yep. And it's like, it's fan service for the people who know Thrawn from the Timothy Zahn books, but it's also a damn good character and a damn good addition to this new story that you've been telling. And so, I mean, I'm all for... I have no problem with the idea of bringing in elements and ideas. And I mean, I have no doubt that the sequel trilogy has easily been touching on, previous, Legends ideas. Legends... I mean, we know it is, but they're not doing straight adaptations. And I think that's the thing that's frustrating for people, but it's one of the things that I'm fine with. It's like, it's one thing if you do adaptations, it's like adapting a book. It's like you're basically going to hamstring a filmmaker from doing their own thing. Yeah. If you want to hew so closely to the original material. But if you bring in that material in an interesting way, like I feel like they've been doing, that changes things. I mean, it changes people's perceptions of what you're doing. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why, if you want to do a story within the setting of the Old Republic, fine, do that. Just don't necessarily feel like you have to do something that's already been done. Yeah.
No, I completely agree, because I enjoyed the books and all are great, and I love them, and I completely understand why Disney had to when Disney purchased Lucasfilms, had to cut off and say now you guys are listed as canon. But I do like how they're slowly bringing in just certain characters. I mean, Thrawn, that's really what rejuvenated this this franchise after Return of the Jedi it was Thrawn.
Yeah.
It was Timothy Zahn. And so, being a huge fan favorite of him, bringing him back in and showing that, hey, we can take stories from the Legends world, the expanded universe world, and slowly bring them in, certain, and we don't have to bring them all in. Obviously, don't do that because that's going to be awful. But bring in certain characters that are very, very good. Timothy Zahn and Thrawn, and they wrote a book called Thrawn, and now there's a new book called Thrawn Allegiance, which is about Darth Vader and Thrawn. So I'm excited to see where that happens because obviously from a expanded universe, Thrawn and Darth Vader were never together. Darth Vader's dead. Emperor Palpatine's dead. Now Thrawn takes over. He takes over the entire Galactic Empire at that point. So I'm excited for this book coming out to see, we're taking this character that was in the Legends universe. He's now a part of the canon universe, and now we get to actually see him interact with somebody that he never got to interact with. And he's a very tactician. He's very thoughtful. He's very strategic and all this stuff. Where you have Darth Vader, who's just a go get it done. He's just gonna force choke everybody to get what he wants. So I'm really excited to see stuff like that. So I'm very excited about how Disney is moved forward with the franchise so far. What they've done, bringing in, trying to bring in, the fan favorites, and appeasing some of the fans. Not throwing necessarily everything out the window, but bringing some of it in. And you can't have you have to cut off the old stuff because. If like you were saying, you can't trying to adapt movies from the stuff that's already out there, especially when Star Wars books at one point had when you went from Del Rey to Bantam back to Del Rey now, and you had a set of authors and you went to a different set of authors and you went back. You can't have the same stories, the same thought process, the same ideas because even back then they didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah,
it really wasn't until Star Wars got back into Del Rey's hands the second time around where there was truly a all right, here's where we're going to start, and we're going to move forward, and though we're going to have 10 different authors, this is the thought we want. And so I like that Disney just cut it all off, said, you're Legends now, we don't recognize you or accept any of you, we might bring some of you back in, which they've done some of that, and move forward. So, it'll be, I think if Disney wants to do something really huge and successful from a fan base standpoint of the Legends, is we need to get the Old Republic in there. That'll be... because that's arguably one of most people's favorite Legends parts of the history, if you will. So,
and I'm sure they'll do it.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll do it when they're ready. I mean, because that is an important part of it. I mean, you definitely want them to. You definitely want them to be respectful of that, and be mindful of that. I mean, I know there's gonna be other TV series and stuff like that they're doing. That may be a good avenue for that.
For their new streaming services, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody wanted Netflix to do it, but Disney's wanting to create their own streaming service. And why not a better platform to use theirs and announce a new one? So, yeah.
Well, speaking of appeasing the fans,
yes.
Are we ever going to discuss something that would be one of the ultimate things Disney could do to appease their fans? I think you guys know what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
A 4K edition, unaltered, original Star Wars trilogy?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you.
Get
out of my head.
So,
Green.
I know that's been one of the big fingers crossed moments in the recent, in the recent talk of Disney acquiring Fox's entertainment division. I know it's been one of the big fingers crossed things, and you mentioned it yesterday in a post that I posted about, there's some good possibilities when it comes to Disney opening Fox TV.
That's things I think I read a direct quote from Kathleen Kennedy. If I'm not, presumably it was a quote from Kathleen Kennedy saying those are George's movies.
Yeah.
We're not going to touch him. We're going to leave him alone. And I was like, oh, come on.
Yes, there is a part of me that still thinks that there's a chance that it will happen at some point.
Yeah.
It may not happen until, God forbid, George Lucas passes away. But I can't imagine it not happening, period. I have a feeling it will happen at some point. The big question is when.
And will we be alive?
Exactly. I think it would happen. I think it would definitely happen in the first generation's lifetime, because if it didn't, then what's the point in doing it? Like, the first generation's the one that wants it the most. And the thing is, it's like, so it's partially it's related to rights issues, because 20th Century Fox owns the original Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just the original. Lucasfilm owns
That's the thing, though.
Empire.
Think about all the. I'm sorry, but like, think about all the movies that have been, all the really old movies that have been,
Oh yeah.
that have been cleaned up and everything for Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And what it's like we're seeing movies that are like 50, 60 years old.
Yeah.
Getting.
And that's a profound part of human history. That's a profound part of movie history. I mean, it really is. I mean, I love the fact that I have a box set of a lot of Alfred Hitchcock's finest work.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for the fact that I have a box set of most of Stanley Kubrick's work. I'm grateful for the fact that it's like movies, but the thing is, it's like there's so many complicated ideas and complicated emotions that come with Star Wars and with the unaltered Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm completely sympathetic to all of them because that's part of the reason why I have not purchased the Blu-rays, is because I've been holding out hope that one day we will get what we want.
It's also a little bit in spite of the fact that.
Yeah, it really is.
You and I basically have both said that we refuse to buy the Blu-rays until they do the unaltered trilogy.
Now, when episode 9 is done and they do the inevitable 9-movie box set of those movies, I have a feeling I'll probably be changing my mind regardless of which versions we're getting.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is, it's like, I do want these movies in the best possible format imaginable, which would be Ultra HD 4K Ultra HD.
Right now, as we speak. This is where I understand why they haven't done it, is because technology is changing so much that right now we're at 4K, while in Japan they're at 8K. So,
yeah.
So while we want it, and I want a 4K edition, I understand why it still hasn't been out yet to an extent. But I'm also the guy. I collected all. I have literally every single Star Wars in every single format, with the exception of I don't have Laserdisc. It's the only one I don't have is Laserdisc.
Yeah.
Christmas gift. Christmas gift if you're listening. But I had the old VHS individually, not in the box set as they were released. And then I got the box set when they released it. And then they have the THX. And I have the special edition widescreen, full screen. We'll get back to
I have both of those. I had both of those.
And then let's see where we go from there. Well, then obviously we had
the 2004.
Well,
the
prequels.
We
had the prequels come out and they had widescreen, full screen. I have all that. And then we had it was 2004. It was the first DVD set.
Yep.
And it was a special edition, obviously. Everything's special edition now.
Yeah, and then 2006, which is when they released the bonus features of the unaltered.
Yeah, and I have that.
Yeah.
We pull out that a lot, and that's what I showed Asher. So when we watched the original, so he saw them the first time as special edition, Blu-ray, and then when we watched it again, I saw it as the DVD unaltered edition, but on a 65-inch 4K TV. It's a small little box, and he's like, "Why is it not filling the whole screen?"
Oh, I know.
It's just rough when you watch it. I mean,
Eddie. Yeah, I mean, I have so many. I have a few DVDs that are not anamorphic widescreen. It kills me to see it in just a box. It's like, what are you doing to me?
Do you not remember me telling you, because like I don't own the Blu-rays. I haven't actually watched the Blu-rays, but I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube that talk about the changes between the unaltered version and then the Blu-rays and everything like that. Do you remember me telling you about some of those ridiculous changes that have been made?
Oh, there's a ton.
Yeah.
There's a ton.
Yeah.
They're just such head scratchers.
I know when you hosted the trilogy before Force Awakens.
I did, yeah.
And I think those were all on Blu-ray, right?
So at the time, it was matter of fact, it was 2 weeks or 2 years and like a few weeks ago when I had a trilogy party at my house, and we watched 4, 5, and 6. the week of 7 coming out, and I debated before I started the movies of which edition were we gonna watch, and I just bought the Steelbook Blu-ray versions at the time.
Yeah.
And the problem that I had is at the time I had a 55-inch TV, and I had the DVD, unaltered, original, and I'd watched those on myself like the week before, and it's in a little box, and there was like 20 of us or something like that came over that day.
Yeah,
there was quite a few of us, and I'm like, all right, so we're gonna watch these original, unaltered on a 55-inch. Excuse me, and it's still gonna be inside a small little box, and so I just decided to watch the Blu-ray edition of it, and I didn't have a VHS player, so I couldn't play the VHS because I had thought about that, but I didn't have a VHS player at the time. Now I got one. But yeah, so I picked the Blu-ray. That was the first time you watched it. And I think you came in. You missed A New Hope.
I missed A New Hope, but I saw Empire and Jedi. Yeah.
And there was little scenes that you're like, oh, I didn't know that. And I remember you bursted out laughing when we saw Wicket, the Ewok, with Leia, and his eyes blinked. And you're like, what the hell? What?
I think I had forgotten the fact that was one of the changes they made in the Blu-ray was the fact that the Ewoks blink. And I do also remember thinking, it's like, okay, some of these choices are not quite as egregious as everybody's making them out to be. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like, let's be perfectly frank. Star Wars fans are some of the whitest pop culture fans in movie history. I mean, I'll gladly include myself in that as well. Because, case in point, I haven't bought the Blu-rays because I don't have the theatrical original versions. Right. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, yeah, I remember watching those, and I'm like, okay, some of these are not that bad. But yeah, I think I had completely forgotten about the fact that was one of the changes they made in Jedi, was the fact that the Ewoks blinked. Yeah. And it's like, wow, that's weird. But the thing is, it's like, I also didn't think they looked as creepy as like some people may amount to be, and it's like, no, they still look like cute Ewoks. I mean, they just blink now. It's like, okay. And then, I think the one, where he throws the Emperor over, it's like, it's not as bad as what I was expecting. I was expecting like a repeat of Revenge of the Sith. It's like, it doesn't play quite as badly, and it's like, you sort of rationalize it. It's like, okay, I kind of get why he does it. He's saying that to the Emperor, but it's like,
so much more powerful.
Oh yeah, without saying it, because I mean the music takes over.
More George. Right?
Well, and the thing is, the music takes over. John Williams completely takes over in that moment, and it's it's arguably the most powerful piece of scoring in any Star Wars movie. That I will always contend that section from the point that Vader brings up Leia and Luke goes at him hard, everything from that point up until the point where Vader throws him over the edge is probably John Williams' finest hour in the Star Wars franchise. Right. And that's saying something.
That's a good point.
It is always just, that part always moves me every time I watch it, because it's done so well. It's performed so well, and there's this charge that comes up with that is just unlike anything else in any of the movies. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, it's at some point, like I said, I mean, when episodes 1 through 9 come out in that inevitable 9-movie box set, I'm sure I will buy the Blu-rays then, regardless of what's available. Because, I want all 9 movies together. It's like, and I do want to see those three movies at least in as the best possible format I can watch them in. And yeah, I mean, I'm stoked for what we're gonna see next week. I'm stoked for what Rian Johnson has in store. It's like, I've been a fan of his since Brick. I I enjoyed Brothers Bloom. It's probably my least favorite film of his, but I mean, it's still a pretty good movie. Looper's just really inventive sci-fi time travel movie. Brick was the one that I absolutely loved, though, and I love the way he played with genre in that movie. And yeah, I've been excited about the idea of him making this movie since he was announced. So, and what I've seen of the movie, I've been trying to avoid the TV ads and stuff like that. So I've just basically got the 2 trailers to tide me over, and it's like that's all I really want. I mean, I know the big mistake I made there were a lot of mistakes I made when Phantom Menace came out. First was trying to rationalize that was a good movie. But secondly was the fact that I read literally everything I could possibly get my hands on about that movie going into it. And I kind of regretted that afterwards. It's like I liked going into episodes 2 and 3 with less knowledge of like what was going into the movies and stuff like that. And so when the new movies have come in, it's like I'm avoiding as much as I can. I mean, I'm still hyped about it, but I'm just avoiding it. I'm avoiding a lot of the noise. Yeah. I'm trying to avoid a lot of the noise. I mean, you know, and that's hard to do on the internet. But the fact of the matter is, it's like it's really, for me, it's really gotten me more excited about these movies than I probably have been since anytime since Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm the same way on this one. So when The Force Awakens came out, I devoured everything. I mean, every little knowledge you have, every TV spot. I mean, I was in front of the TV being sucked into it. But with The Last Jedi, it's just like, you know what? There was a lot of stuff that I read originally on Force Awakens that really kind of, after watching the movie, was like, oh, I'm glad they didn't do this, or oh, I wish they would have done that. That, you know, you could say that some of The Force Awakens was, obviously I was very thrilled, loved it. It was a great movie.
Yeah.
And then there were things like, man, this wasn't in there. I was really hoping this was in there.
Mm-hmm.
So with The Last Jedi, it's kind of been the same thing. I've seen the 2 trailers. We saw the first one at Star Wars Celebration, and then they just released one not too long ago.
Yeah.
And that's it. I haven't watched TV spots. I haven't read anything. I mean, I'm on Facebook or Twitter, and I just scroll right through that. I try not to read any of it.
Yeah.
You know, there's some stuff that I have accidentally read. You know, I'm reading other stuff about. I'm reading about Ryan Johnson and something else.
Yeah.
I'm like, I didn't want to see that. But yeah, it's just very much like you with Phantom Menace. You know, Force Awakens was my weak point where I devoured it all, and this one I'm trying to avoid it all. I just want to walk in, sit down, eat my milk duds, drink a Dr. Pepper,
Yeah.
and enjoy it and see what happens and go from there. And you know, and I don't want to compare it to, well, here's what we did in New Hope, here's what we did in Force Awakens, here's what Empire Strikes Back did, so what are you going to do? You know, I do very much want a dark tone. I think we're going to get a dark tone.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't want any similarities outside. I don't think we are. I mean, this is Ryan Johnson, who did Looper and Brick and threw you for a complete turn. You had no idea what was going on, and so that's what I'm actually hoping. I'm hoping that like we see one thing and then boom, like we get something else totally different, you know, than what we were expecting or thinking or anticipating could happen.
Yeah, and hearing early on in the process, I think before they even started filming, like Lawrence Kasdan saying that like he was kind of he didn't even know what to. He was surprised by what he'd written and what he had seen in Rian Johnson's script. That it's like, wow, this is something else. And it's like the fact that you hear that from one of the main architects of this new part of the franchise. I think, you know, I completely get where you're coming from with Force Awakens because, like you said, I mean, I was the same way I was with Phantom Menace. I basically devoured everything before seeing it. I think part of the reason for me for doing that was it'd been so long since we got something new. Right. It'd been 16 years since Return of the Jedi came out. I'm not even including the Ewok TV movies and that. But as far as movies, it's like, yeah, it was the first new one in a while, and Force Awakens was the first new one since Revenge of the Sith. Not including the Clone Wars 4 episodes. Oh, we'll put it out theatrically, even though it's really, you can tell it's just 4 episodes of the TV series put together. But yeah, and I think it's natural that you do that, and then you realize what you did, and it's like, okay, I need to calm down. And I mean, especially with the explosion of the internet, it's hard to avoid anything when it comes to these movies. It's like, obviously you're going to hear spoilers. Obviously you're going to hear people say, oh, well, this may be the case. This may be the case. It's like, why can't you just, like, calm down and just let it happen? Like, and that's the thing. It's like, that's something that we haven't really had the opportunity to do, and the internet makes it hard. It really does make it hard to do that, because it's like you said, you're looking at Twitter, it's like, okay, I'm avoiding that. Not read that, not read that, not read that. It's like, I want to know nothing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I totally stumbled upon something this afternoon that I don't know if I should share with you guys. I'm thinking like it's from a TV spot. Like how many of us have been following the TV spots?
Well, we were just talking about it. It's like neither of us have watched the TV spots.
Yeah,
I don't know which one you might be referring to, because this is one of the ones where I'm scrolling through and you see, and you're like, dang it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The one where Rey uses the Force to like call Kylo Ren's lightsaber. Yep. You know what I'm talking?
Yeah.
Like that, it's a little tiny blip. It's almost like a vine or something.
Yeah.
But it's just like you see Rey using the Force to call Kylo Ren's lightsaber, and she grabs and she ignites it. And it's like.
Well, now you ruined it for me because I didn't see that. I saw a picture of her holding his lightsaber.
Oh.
But now that she uses the Force, I don't know what that means.
Wow. Okay.
Thanks for spoiling that. I'm not going to watch this movie now. Gosh. Oh, it's over with.
Oh, so does that mean you're getting rid of your tickets for opening night?
Yeah, $1,000. Whoever doesn't have one. Each, by the way. I got 2 of them. But I saw that spot too, and I don't even want to think. I've been trying to not think about it all day, and think about what it could be, what it means, and now that puts a different perspective. So I'm gonna have to not think about it.
Sorry.
Well, the fact of the matter is, it's like it goes to the fact that it's like it's so difficult to avoid spoilers. Yeah. It's so difficult to avoid any information.
Somebody posted like it was no big deal. Like, that's totally.
What are you doing? And then that's the thing. And that's the thing. Like I can look back at it now, hindsight being 2020, and go, what was I thinking? I mean, okay, I know what I was thinking. I know what I was feeling. Wanting to know as much about the movie as possible, but it's like I'm not wired that way anymore. Right. Like I love not knowing. I mean, it's not just Star Wars. It's any movie. Like I would much rather not know anything about a movie going in, other than some basic cursory information I would get from a trailer. Oh, this person's making it, and all that. Yeah. I would much rather go in that way and be surprised by the choices that are made in the film than feel like I know the entire movie going in. Right. And it's like, I think that was, and admittedly, it's like, I can't help but think about that. It was funny, somebody I follow on Twitter did a sarcastic post of all the track listings for the Last Jedi one, and was basically like track 1, track 2, track 3. It's like, and basically just jokingly,
the tracks were like major spoilers.
Yeah, except they really weren't, and it's like it's obviously sarcasm.
The death of Poe Dameron or something.
And the thing is, it's like you look at that was obviously a famous thing that they did when the soundtrack for Phantom Menace came out. It's like it ruined the fact that it's like the funeral of Qui-Gon was one of the titles. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, but no, I mean, it's like, yeah, I can look at, I get where people are coming from, but it's like, I'm not at that point anymore. I'm at the point where it's like, I don't want to know anything about the movie going in. I want to be surprised. Yeah. And, then I will make my decision as to how well they succeed in doing what they want to do. Yeah. I mean, it's we could go on forever talking about this subject. It's like we had several hours talking about it at a Star Wars Celebration and going to, coming from it. It's like, yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I know that it's like part of the reason why I wanted to do this with you two is because of the fact that A, I enjoy talking with you on this subject. B, I mean, I like the idea of sharing, hey, I've got people on here. I've got people in my life who have interesting ideas on these movies and have their own ideas on these movies. And it's like, I want to help bring that out. And it's like, I enjoy talking to you guys about it, and it's like it helps me because of the fact that it's like I learn more talking about you about like what's in the books, what's not in the books, and stuff like that. Then it's like, oh hey, that's actually pretty interesting.
Talking to Daniel makes me want to read the book.
Yeah, yeah.
Seriously.
You should.
I need to. Like I've got a couple. I've got Aftermath and I've got Ahsoka. I still need to dig into those.
I keep wanting to get into the books by way of that very first Timothy Zahn trilogy.
Yeah.
Like the one that has Leia and Han still. It's like it's supposed to be just a couple years after Jedi, supposedly.
Yeah, it's not long after. Yeah, so I actually had somebody ask me, it was just a couple months ago, they're like, I'm thinking about reading the book. Oh no, she's going to get her daughter the book. So she's like, what should I get? Like, I don't know where to go. And I was like, well, obviously there's the legend side of me that says you always have to start off with Thrawn. And you do. I mean, honestly, if you don't know Star Wars or from a book perspective, you got to start off with Thrawn because that literally just kind of, Thrawn leads you into the whole legends category and where to go from there. Because once you read that, then a lot of those characters repeat themselves later on. So it's that part.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely start with Thrawn, and then I would argue that the next one from there is probably the next greatest trilogy in that universe, the Legends universe of Kevin J. Anderson wrote the Jedi Temple trilogy, which was about like Luke Skywalker who created a Jedi Temple on Yavin 4 base in the old Rebel base, and then it brings in Exar Kung, who is a old Sith that had left his spirit in one of the temples there, and one of his students found it and started going down a dark path. And we kind of reintroduced, the same theme again of the original Star Wars trilogy of a guy that was good that turned bad and came back to good at the end. And we did it in 3 books, but it was just really good to see him create this Jedi Temple, which now we talk about going forward into Force Awakens, and we had the flashback from Rey of the temples burning, and we assume it's Luke's temple was being burned. But we still have no answers to what, who, why, how, or any of that. So that's where I would start off with the Legends. Is definitely start off with the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, and all of Timothy Zahn's books are fantastic. He's arguably the best Star Wars author. I'm glad that they brought him back on. He did the Timothy Zahn trilogy, then he did the Thrawn duology, which was a clone impersonation, if you will, of Thrawn. It wasn't a true clone. It was somebody else that looked like Thrawn, where they just taught him to speak, act, and he looked like him.
Where was which book kills off Chewbacca?
So Chewbacca was killed off, and we all hate R.A. Salvador because he killed him, dirty person, and he got a lot of death threats.
That's because Chewie's my favorite character.
That was actually in the first book of the Yuuzhan Vong billion book trilogy or series. That was I don't even remember the name of that book, honestly. But that was a really good series. It was really long. I like the way they adapted lots of different authors into it. But it was the first book in that trilogy, and basically Chewie gave his life to save Anakin Solo, the youngest of the 3 kids that the Solos had. So they had twins, and then they had Anakin, and Chewie saved Anakin by sacrificing himself. As a planet was being destroyed, he threw him in the ship, if you will. And so that was that one. But if you're going into the canon stuff, which is also some really, really good material, and again, there's some bad material already that we've gotten. The Aftermath trilogy that Chuck Wendig wrote is fantastic. He's almost in the canon side of it, what Thrawn or what Zahn was on the legend side of it. It's a very good trilogy. Really funny. Mr. Bones is a character in there that is actually a robot that was created by the other main character, and he's throughout the whole book, and he's got the same K2SO mentality, funny humor here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely a good one. Obviously, Thrawn was brought back in, and his stuff, the Thrawn book that Zahn wrote for canon was really good.
Yeah.
So those are the two that I would start off with. You got to start with Timothy Zahn, or you have to bring Timothy Zahn in there because it was just as good as the original and the Legends. But Chuck Wendig, to me, that Aftermath trilogy, you've got one of them up there.
Yeah.
That's a really good series. And then I was really impressed with another lady. She's new to it, and she's been about Princess Leia. Claudia Gray, she's written a couple of Leia books. We got one called Bloodlines that takes place right after, not right after, but shortly after Return of the Jedi, and it's like building up the Republic, and it's, we all question, well, why wasn't Leia the, high power supreme officer or supreme commander? Why is she in this, the resistance? Why is she not a part of what was destroyed in the New Republic? And the book answers that question very good about, it was basically politics. Politics, and one of the politicians found out that Darth Vader was her father before she ever told anybody outside of Luke and Han about Darth Vader being her dad. Not even Ben Solo. Kylo Ren knew about it. He found out from the media, actually. So, so Claudia Gray, that was called Bloodlines. That was a really good one. And then she even wrote Princess Leia, which I just finished. And this goes all the way back before Princess Leia. This before even before New Hope. This was her training to be in the Senate, the Empire Senate at the time.
Okay.
And takes place like her training, her parents, and everything like that. You read a lot more about her dad and her mom, which we don't even know. Her mom's never even mentioned.
Yeah.
You briefly see her for like 5 seconds at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah. Yeah.
She actually has a very big role in how Leia is who Leia is, how she developed that way. So Claudia Gray has really surprised me in her 2 books that I've read. And there's her third one called Lost Stars. And Lost Stars was a good one takes place through the original trilogy. It starts before A New Hope, and it finishes after Return of the Jedi. And it ties in some of the movie pieces, but from a different perspective. So basically, it's just two people that meet up on a planet, and they end up falling in love, and they join the Empire together. And then they go through the training courses and everything like that, and then they get split up. One stationed on the Death Star, the other one is a TIE fighter pilot, and they kind of just keep crossing back and forth, and they're lovers, but they never got married and stuff. And then he ends up joining the rebellion, and then and from there they catch up again later, and I'm not going to tell you how they catch up, but another great book. So Claudia Gray has really surprised me as well. I mean, so there's 6 books right there that I just mentioned. 7 books.
I have to go to Barnes and Noble.
Well, you don't have to go to Barnes and Nobles. I got them. Just return them in mint condition because that's what they're in. You can borrow them. But, but yeah, so the books are, you definitely need to read books. I mean, I know a lot of people are Star Wars fans based on movies, but it gets a lot more into it than just the movies itself. So. And it takes a while to read for some people, I understand. But, when I worked at Regal with Brian, I read Star Wars in the box office. And our DM was not very fond of that. But, but yeah, that's where I literally read a ton of my Legends books. I easily read 30 Legend books while working at Regal in the box office. So, and it's just it kept going from there. So, but there's a lot of story and history outside of the movies that it intrigues people that have read it, and then it infuriates some other people, especially in the Legends world, because they can't give up the fact that Disney just cut it off. And why can't we just go with this? And you have to. You got to start somewhere new, fresh. So I understood, and I was all for it. I wasn't upset.
I had no problem with Disney acquiring Lucasfilm.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean if
anything,
I was surprised when it happened. I mean, I'd heard that we had heard months before that Kathleen Kennedy was going to take over Lucasfilm, but we didn't know that was long before the acquisition with Disney was finalized.
I've enjoyed all the memes and everything that that have been bitching about this stuff.
Yeah.
Those have been funny to watch. Like all the people that are all the haters who do have a problem with Disney acquiring Star Wars. But I personally, I think we're in good hands.
Well, oh yeah, absolutely, and I definitely agree with that. And I mean, I think a lot of the hate was because of the fact that it's like, you look at what Disney is, and it's like I think they were worried that it was going to be what Disney is, as opposed to look at what they're doing with Marvel. They're letting Marvel do their thing, and it's like they're not making it Disney-fied. I mean, it's like you may occasionally see a movie like Big Hero 6 where they adapt a Marvel property into an animated film, but that's not necessarily going to be, if Marvel Studios is doing something, Marvel Studios is in charge. Like, Lucasfilm is in charge of this. It just happens to be a part of Disney. And, yeah, I mean, I've wanted to, for most of my life, it's like all I knew were the movies. I knew there were books out there, but it's like I've never been a big reader, so it's like I've never really gotten into them. But with the acquisition of Disney, it's like I have Aftermath here, I have Ahsoka here. Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars, based on where they took her in Clone Wars and then what they brought to her in Rebels when they brought her in. And so, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like I definitely want to get into the books. I mean, that's a great, all of those books, based on what I know about what the book series from you, Daniel, it's like that's a pretty good list to start. Yeah. And I mean, I definitely
I'm pretty sure Daniel could teach a session.
Yeah.
I would love it, actually. If there was a Star Wars class in the school somewhere to teach it, I would love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can honestly see that being like one of the kind of like in college, like one of those credits that like
extracurricular.
I'm actually
I see Daniel teaching a class in that.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground, I think, and it's like we've had a really good talk, and it's like as much as I would like to see this go on for a little bit longer, because I know I could go on longer with you guys talking about Star Wars. We will probably wrap it up here, and hopefully we will do it again sometime. I definitely want to talk more as far as where the Star Wars universe is going, and it's like it's because it's not going away anytime soon. I mean, that's the big important takeaway from the acquisition with Disney, but also with the new movies with Rian Johnson doing a trilogy, and the more we learn about that, when Han Solo comes out, Last Jedi, Episode 9, all of that.
And I know you guys were talking about this earlier, but I am glad that Episode 9 is in the hands of JJ. I think like.
Oh yeah, I am too.
I do think it's in capable hands.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to believe that like he's gonna copy Return of the Jedi.
No, and I don't think that'll happen.
I don't think he will either. It's hard not to go there, but it's hard not to go there. But at the same time, I think I have faith.
Oh yes, as do I.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I get why Force Awakens was the movie it was. I'm also excited about the fact that it's like I don't feel like Last Jedi is going to be the movie. It's not just going to be a carbon copy of Empire. Yeah. I don't think, and I think that was one of the big problems with the prequel trilogy, where it's like I feel like with Attack of the Clones, with a lot of the criticism that the fan menace got, I feel like he kind of made that movie dark for the sake of, it's like it's gotta be dark, and it's like, people are expecting it to be like Empire. It's like, I mean, it's very much not, but it's also, that story. The fact of the matter is there were a lot of mistakes in telling that story. I still feel that way. But we could talk about that for another half hour, but it's like we should probably wrap it up here. But thank you, Daniel, for making the time with us to do this. I'm glad the three of us were able to get together and do this. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We'll definitely have to do it again.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we'll have a lot to say after Last Jedi, after finally seeing it next week.
The last time we did a Star Wars podcast, it was like it was like a week before Force Awakens comes out. Now we're doing.
It was actually no. It was
the
the
next one going to be like a week before Episode 9 comes out, or
no. Hopefully we'll do something more recent. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's like I'm starting to get a much better idea of what I want to do with this podcast, and it's like I want to do more regular stuff. I want to, this is only like episode 23 in 2 years. It's like I want it to be like episode 23 of the year if I'm being perfectly honest. But so yeah, I mean, we will not go 2 years without doing another Star Wars podcast. I mean, look at it this way. This time next year, there'll be 2 Star Wars movies already out to discuss. I mean, we'll probably know more about what TV shows they're going to do. We'll probably know more about, the way Rebels ended and all that stuff.
We'll have a Star Wars hotel from Disney. Thank you, Disney.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So thank you, Daniel, for making the time. I really appreciate it. Ron, it's, we'll definitely... you and I will definitely do something else as well, as opposed to just Star Wars related. Because I mean, we've got a lot in common.
Right down the hall. It's kind
yeah. So we'll So I mean, we'll definitely do something as well. But yeah, for now, this is Brian Scuttle. Thank you very much for listening to Sonic Cinema Podcast. I've got a lot more coming up in 2018. I might have 1 or 2 more in 2017, depending on time. But thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you later.
And may the Force be with you.
Always.